Hello, my name is Miriam Akhtar. I'm a positive psychologist based in Bristol in the UK, and I am going to share with you today some happiness habits for the corona crisis. I have been working in positive psychology for over 12 years now, and I was one of the first positive psychologists to qualify from the Masters in Applied Positive Psychology. And I've written a number of books, one of which is The Little Book of Happiness. This came out in 2019, and I've adapted the habits now for the corona crisis. So I'm going to share all 12 habits with you and adapted for the corona crisis. And what's the point of doing this? Well, we all need more resilience right now. So what is resilience? It's the ability to cope positively, be in control of the way we respond to situations and or bounce back from adversities. Resilience is very much about maintaining our well-being during unfavourable conditions. And that's what we find ourselves in 2020 with the pandemic. So a lovely metaphor for resilience, which I was first taught by one of my colleagues, Dr. Chris Johnston, who's written a book called 7 Ways to Build Resilience. And it's called the boat and water metaphor. So just imagine that your resilience is like the water level in a reservoir or a lake. And if your resilience level is low and there are rocks of adversity ahead, then you are more likely to smash into those rocks. But what we do in positive psychology is we feed our reservoir of resilience with positive emotions, positive behaviors, positive thinking. And what this does is it raises our level of resilience so that we're better able to sail over life's tough times. So positive psychology interventions are very much about feeding that reservoir with all kinds of positive behaviors, lots of other things as well, diet, sleep. But in positive psychology, we very much have a contribution to make with positive psychology interventions. So I'm going to share with you 12 habits of happiness which act as upwards arrows to help build your well-being. And here they are. So let's start with happiness habit number 1, which is learn to play. Now, as adults, we don't have as much time to play as we did when we were children. It comes very naturally to children, but actually active recreation has a lot of benefits for us, many more benefits than passive leisure like watching TV. But although it takes more effort to get started, it really does have a lot of benefits for our well-being. So the idea behind this happiness habit is to write a playlist of TFL, things to look forward to. What do you enjoy doing that's a form of active recreation? Maybe it's gardening, maybe it's playing sports. So write a list of things that are active forms of recreation and put sunshine into your soul. So that's the first step. The second step is to schedule something in your diary every day and do it for about 15 minutes, more if you can, less if you can't. I learned this practice from a book called Quality of Life Therapy by Michael Frisch, and it's still one of the practices that I would give a coaching client in the first session. So write your list of things to look forward to and do something from that list every day to sort of feed your reservoir of resilience. And this is even more important right now when we're trying to maintain our well-being in the unfavourable conditions of the pandemic. Happiness habit number 2 is to express gratitude, a felt sense of wonder, thankfulness, and appreciation for life. Now, gratitude isn't only about counting blessings, it's more than thank you therapy. What it does is it trains the brain to tune in and notice what's good in our lives. So this is a practice actually that is the very first practice that I share on workshops. So of course we've lost a lot during the pandemic, but what has been gained? And here are some questions that are really helpful. What do you have a new appreciation for? I know for me, it's my garden. I've lived in my house for about 25 years, and my garden was much neglected, but now I'm really enjoying having that contact with nature. So what do you have a fresh appreciation for? And who are you grateful to? Another very useful question. Right now, during the pandemic, I'm very grateful to one of my neighbours who set up a WhatsApp group for everyone in my street. And that's been just really helpful, very supportive. We're all helping each other along to get through this period of lockdown that we are currently in here in the UK. And the final question, what has gone well in the current circumstances? Well, I think for me, it's having a sense of community. That community spirit has become very strong in the road that I live in. So what's gone well for you in the current circumstances? So express gratitude is happiness habit number 2. Moving on to happiness habit number 3, savor the positive. Savoring is the capacity to attend to, appreciate, and enhance the positive experiences in life. And it comes in a variety of forms. There's basking, you might bask in sunshine. There's marveling at a wonderful view, luxuriating, in a nice warm bath, or cherishing. Cherishing is about savoring the love between people. And this is a practice that I often teach alongside expressing gratitude. They go hand in hand. So gratitude is about noticing what's good in our lives, and savoring is about deepening the enjoyment, maximizing the pleasure on offer from a positive experience. And there are a number of steps that can help us to savor, and I'm going to demonstrate a live demonstration here. Well, not live, but anyway, on tape. So, and this is what I normally do in a workshop. I would get a bowl of fruit and invite the group members to savor. So, well, first of all, first step, slow down and stretch it out, and then put your full attention on what you're savoring. And then apply all your senses. What does it look like? Notice the color, the texture. What does it smell like? Lovely smell. What does it sound like when you bite into it? Notice the sound as you crunch into it. What does it feel like? What's the texture like on your tongue as you're biting into it, and also as you swallow? And then notice the taste. What does it taste of? Yum. And I find it very helpful to use the senses. I'll just tell you a little story. I used to have a terrible habit. In the middle of a happy experience, I would ask myself, but am I happy? And what do you think happened? Instantly, the pleasure would vanish. The happiness would go. And because I was overthinking it, analyzing the experience. So when you use your senses, it helps you to really stay present to the experience. It adds to the experience rather than analyzing the experience as you might normally. And then when you're savoring, I find it really helpful to reflect on the source of pleasure. You know, what do I appreciate here? What do I value? And what memories come to mind, for example? And right, I'm just going to have a little savor of this strawberry. And I get lovely memories of England in summer, going strawberry picking Wimbledon, playing tennis, having strawberries and cream. So just let your mind wander a bit with it. So if there are two practices which I think can give you a really good start to experience more positive emotion, it would be gratitude and savouring. And the combination together is really powerful. So what is there to savour right now? That's something, you know, we are deprived of our freedom. So we need to get more pleasure than ever from what's immediately available around us. So maybe going out into the garden and really savouring the smell of flowers, how the garden is growing, for example. So look around you and see what is there to savour right here, right now, and what can I appreciate? Let's move on to the next happiness habit, which is to harness your strengths. Now, positive psychology is also known as the science of strengths, and your strengths are the positive you. It's you at your best. And not only that, but they also act as your inner resources that we can draw on when we need them. So if we want to strengthen ourselves to go through the pandemic, then using our strengths is a really helpful thing to do. So there are two main types of strengths. There are your positive qualities, whether that's kindness or courage. We call this your character strengths. And then there's your talents, whatever that is, whether it's communication or data analysis. And these are more your performance strengths. And your greatest potential for growth is in your strengths. That's where you get the most ROI, return on investment of the time and the effort that you put into developing your strengths. So here's a question for you. Which of your strengths can you draw on to help you through this time? Sense of humor, for example, perseverance, trust. And what new strengths have you noticed in yourself during the pandemic? So let's move on to happiness habit number 5, which is to live with meaning. We all need a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. And again, because we've lost so much of our autonomy to do as we like, the need for meaning is even greater. So a question that I like is to ask, what is your ikigai? This is a Japanese phenomenon, which means your reason to get up in the morning. Maybe you have a vocation of some kind, or maybe it's to do with looking after your family or raising the next generation. So living life with purpose, with meaning and purpose. There's a strong association between having a sense of meaning and well-being. So if you're wondering what the difference is between meaning and purpose, meaning gives you the why in life, why we do what we do. Maybe because we want to raise good human beings. So why we do what we do, what's important to you. And the how in life is how you live your sense of meaning. That's what your purpose is about. So some more questions for you. What is important to you right now? What do you value more as a result of the pandemic? Maybe it's your relationships with others. And how has your source of meaning changed? There is a type of well-being. There are the two main dimensions to well-being. One's hedonic well-being, which is about our experience of positive emotions and feeling good. And the other is called eudaimonic well-being. And this is a sort of deeper type of happiness. And although there's lots of different sides, aspects of eudaimonic well-being, we can sum it up in a simple formula, which is if you put effort into something that's meaningful to you, then you gain this deeper fulfillment. So live with meaning is happiness habit number 5. Happiness habit number 6 is to learn optimism. Now, optimistic explanatory style is a type of optimism that has 3 dimensions to it. And it's about the way we explain the causes and influences of events to ourselves. And if you're not particularly optimistic, maybe you're not a born optimist, this is a style of optimism that you can learn. So think like an optimist when something goes wrong. So when something goes wrong, a pessimist will say, it's me, it's personal. The cause is all my fault. They'll say, it's always going to be like this, it's permanent. And they'll also say, everything is ruined. This negative event is going to spread, it's going to be pervasive and affect everything else in my life. But an optimist thinks about negative events in the opposite way. So this is how to practice thinking more optimistically. So if something goes wrong, think about how it's not me, how it's not personal. What this means really is pulling out to the bigger picture and noticing all the other factors that were involved in the negative event happening. So not only your own role, but also seeing the influence of other people and other factors. An optimist will also say, it's not permanent. This is something that's temporary. It's not going to go on forever. And they also see it as not pervasive. So this negative event is just affecting this slice of life. And other things are going well in my life, maybe my work or my health or my relationship, you know, whatever it is. So think like an optimist. When something goes wrong, how might it be not be me, not be permanent, and not be pervasive? Happiness habit number 7 is to value relationships. There was a psychologist called Chris Peterson who said he could sum up the whole of the science of happiness in 3 words: other people matter. And this is why we need other people for our well-being. Even the most introverted of us, we have a need for human connection. We are social animals. But how to connect in an era of social distancing? Well, maybe we should call it physical distancing, because we can still be in touch with the people we care about. So get creative about staying connected. So whether it's having a virtual cuppa, doing things on Zoom or house party or Skype or whatever it is. But also don't forget about, let's go back to basics. Let's talk on the phone or write a letter. So, you know, there are other ways that we can stay connected, even if we can't be together in person. I also recognize that this is a time that can really test our relationships. So just some ways in which we can strengthen our relationship resilience and help us to manage conflict. So if you do end up having an argument with someone, you've been stuck in a house with them for weeks on end, have a cool off time, try and understand what's going on for them, and also seek to be understood as well. Make requests rather than demands. Start with softly, and own your own role in conflict. Our relationships are very valuable to us, and there is a positivity ratio for relationships that Professor John Gottman discovered in his Love Lab at the University of Washington, that we need to have 5 times more positive emotional events going on in a relationship for every 1 negative emotional event. So you can really see how important it is to look after our relationships. If it takes, you know, as many as 5 positives to put right the damage of 1 negative emotional event. Happiness habit number 8 is to practice kindness. Acts of kindness, they're a win-win. They're good for you and for the greater good. It's the social glue that underpins our sense of community. And there's a double act between kindness and gratitude. So if you do an act of kindness for someone, they feel good and you feel good too. And you get this positive emotion bouncing back and forth between 2 people. So what acts of kindness have you given and received? Try and recognize what others have done for you, and also seek to behave with kindness, to do random acts of kindness or intentional acts of kindness. And I really think this is what we need to help our planet through this difficult time. You know, what acts of kindness can you do to help along the community, and also recognize and value the acts of kindness that you receive as well. Happiness habit number 9 is to get physical. There was a professor at Harvard, Tal Ben-Shahar, and I love this quote from him, which is, "Not exercising is like taking depressants." We know that physical exercise, physical activity is one of the best things that we can do for our mental health. You know, in the short term, you get that lovely boost of, or burst of endorphins to make you feel good. Not only that, but regular exercise also boosts the immune system, and we all need to have good immune systems right now. So again, get creative around the restrictions. If you can't go out or go very far, then make the most of your home. What I do is I've got a mini trampoline in my kitchen, and I just put on some 80s pop, and I bop away for 5 minutes on the trampoline. It's enough to give me that, you know, that boost, boost the mood. So there's still plenty of ways of getting physical, and I really do think that good mental health is built on the foundations of physical health. Happiness habit number 10 is to turn to nature. Fresh air and foliage is really good for us. It calms the mood, it soothes anxiety, and it acts as an instant digital detox. So get out into the garden if you have one, or into the park. And of course, being exposed to sunlight will also boost immune functioning. It boosts our levels of vitamin D. So I really recommend that you expose your forearms, get out into the park and expose your forearms, and just really appreciate nature around you. Grow seeds, nurture green spaces. And I don't know if you're familiar with the idea of green exercise, which is physical activity in a natural environment. It only takes around 5 minutes of walking in the park, while swimming, whatever it is, horse riding. It only takes around 5 minutes to start producing positive emotions. And if you do it by water, a blue zone, such as the sea, the lake, a river, and it also produces the positive emotion of calm. Happiness habit number 11 is to practice mindfulness. And our mindfulness is very much about developing our awareness of our inner and outer landscape. And it's certainly something that can help us manage the stress and anxiety of the corona crisis. It creates a gap between what happens and how you respond. Just sort of say a little bit more of that. If we can think of our thoughts and emotions almost like clouds or the weather, it comes and goes, it helps us to sort of stand back from those thoughts and emotions, so we're less sucked into the drama of them. And as we stand back, as we gain a little bit of perspective with that gap, then we have more mastery over how we respond to situations that we find ourselves in. I think it's one of the best practices of all. Mindfulness is very much the contribution of the East of Buddhist practice into positive psychology. And not only mindfulness, but other meditation practices like loving kindness meditation have been found to have a very positive impact on our mental health, producing positive emotions and lowering levels of depression symptoms. So, my very favorite piece of research, Davidson et al. 2013, the study that was done examining the brains of people who go through the 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course, which was put together by John Kabat-Zinn. And what they discovered is that 8 weeks of mindfulness meditation practice develops the left prefrontal cortex, which is this, it's around here. And this is the seat of positive emotions in the brain. So by practicing mindfulness meditation, it helps to develop the left prefrontal cortex, where our positive emotions appear to be activated. Happiness habit number 12 is to strive for success. So achievement or accomplishment is one of the 5 pillars to well-being in Martin Seligman's PERMA model of well-being. Now, of course, in the pandemic, it's very hard to live life as normal, and maybe you can't strive for the things that you might have wanted to strive for. I think here it's very helpful to think about acceptance and commitment therapy. Again, I got this from one of my colleagues, Dr. Chris Johnston, his version of acceptance and commitment therapy. So the A stands for accept what you can't change, and also change what you can. That's what you need to sort of look at. What can I do in these circumstances? Then commit to what's important to you and take action. So what can you do in the current circumstances? There's a lot that we can't do, but what can you do? And how can you develop and how can you achieve those things that are within your control? Another thing I would say as well, because these are exceptional circumstances and anxiety levels are high, having a routine is something that I think can help make quarantine life much easier. Also, take the opportunity to rest. I think one of the joys of lockdown has been this opportunity to just step off the treadmill, you know, the daily frazzle of life, of commuting to work, of multitasking, juggling, so many things, so many demands on our time. So take the opportunity to rest and reflect on what's purpose. Now would be a good time to refine your purpose in life. And also I would say, find your flow. Flow is a deeply satisfying state of being in the zone when you're sort of completely absorbed in what you're doing, totally engaged. So what does that for you? What naturally absorbs you? Maybe it's reading, maybe it's playing music, gardening, baking, doing jigsaws. You know, maybe there's a 1,000-piece jigsaw that you've got that you want to do. So look for opportunities to have a flow experience, that really satisfying state where you're completely absorbed in what you're doing. So those were all 12 habits of happiness from my book, the little book of happiness. And I'd like to move on to just what I think of as the sort of silver lining in adversity. It's known as post-traumatic growth. And you can sum it up in that famous phrase, that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. Post-traumatic growth is the positive change that can happen in the wake of a traumatic event. And this is the subject of one of my other books, What is Post-Traumatic Growth? So yeah, what is post-traumatic growth? I like this quote. It is through this process of struggling with adversity that changes may arise that propel the individual to a higher level of functioning than which existed prior to the event. So that's about how adversity, such as the pandemic, can act as a springboard that can act to higher functioning. And there are 5 main ways in which people say that they come to benefit from going through an adversity. So people often talk about having a greater sense of their personal strength. They've been tested and their strengths have developed. as their resilience has developed through going through this difficult experience. People also talk about having warmer, closer relationships. I think you really find out who your friends are when you go through a difficult experience. So you might have a real appreciation and value those people who came through for you in the difficult experience. The next benefit of adversity is a fresh appreciation for life. That again, when our liberties are deprived, it leads us to really appreciate. I'm so looking forward to going to the seaside. My first opportunity to leave the city that I live in. So so one of the ways in which we feel that we have benefit is that we really stop taking things for granted. They really appreciate what we do have. People also speak about having a sense of new possibilities. After the endings come the new beginnings, and of spiritual development as well. It can often lead to a deeper sense of faith or a stronger sense of meaning and purpose. Now, this tends to happen on the other side of adversity. And to get to a place where post-traumatic growth is possible, it does involve struggling with our perception of what's happened. Think of it as a sort of breakdown to break through. And I'm very grateful to Professor Stephen Joseph, who wrote a book called What Doesn't Kill Us. He's done a lot of the research into post-traumatic growth, a researcher based in the UK. And he's got a wonderful metaphor to explain post-traumatic growth. It's the shattered vase metaphor. So think of life as a vase that sort of shatters into 1,000 pieces. Now, what do you do with these pieces of life? Well, there's two ways that you can approach it. First is assimilation. So you pick up the pieces and you put life back together the way it was before. So an example of that might be a businessman going back to work in the same role after suffering a heart attack. So life looks the same, but it's much more fragile than it was before. So this is assimilation. But another thing you can do is you can pick up the pieces of life and create something new and beautiful, like a beautiful mosaic. So life is different, it looks different, but it's much more robust than it was before. So an example of this might be a widow who decides to go back to work after losing her husband to support the family. So, and this is accommodation, and this is the way to post-traumatic growth, a pathway. And I think sort of my top tip, I think, for approaching the pandemic, or the way we think about the pandemic, is to accept the reality of what has happened. If we're in a state of denial, it can be really hard to move forward. So accept that life has shattered. Our normal way of being has been shattered. And then give yourself time and reflect and think about, what's left and how can we pick up the pieces of life and put it back together again. So I hope you enjoyed that sort of overview of happiness habits for the corona crisis. If you want to find out more, my books are The Little Book of Happiness, came out in 2019, Positive Psychology for Overcoming Depression, that's on its second edition now, and What is Post-Traumatic Growth, and my website is positivepsychologytraining.co.uk. So wishing you well, and hope that you manage to maintain your resilience in these unfavourable times.